Another year, another WWE 2K game to review. I always find 2K's wrestling related offerings to be adequate if a little underwhelming. Basically, they're fine, but they're kind of all that we have. It doesn't help that for every step forward they seem to take a step back. For instance, the last 2 years have tightened up the controls a fair amount, but they lost 2K15 and 16's showcase mode in the process. Not an insignificant subtraction at all. So does WWE 2K19 manage to buck the trend? Let's take a look. Let's start with the basics, namely the moment-to-moment gameplay. The 2K games have always had a problem with feeling unusually floaty, and while 2K19 is no exception, it definitely feels like a tighter, more responsive feeling game as a whole. There are also still occasional bugs where your character model will become entangled in the ring ropes, another wrestler, or some random object in the ring, but these feel less prevalent than in previous games, so that's something. The limited reversal system still works fine and keeps the game from being too mindless. I often find myself trying to force an opponent to waste their reversals on a less important move before trying to hit my finisher, for instance. WWE 2K19 also features a new payback meter that fills as you take damage. Once filled, you get access to minor and major abilities that can potentially change the tide of a match. These abilities range from playing possum, recovering quickly, or automatically breaking out of a pin or submission. Again, they add just a little more depth to a game that could easily be super mindless. With that said, slightly improved gameplay can only entertain for so long without plenty of different modes to use it in. Thankfully, WWE 2K19 isn't nearly as feature barren as the last two entries. On top of the standard free-play modes with the usual array of match types, which now have the option to feature up to 8 wrestlers at once, the game also brings back Showcase mode, as well as totally revamping the bland annual career mode into something with an actual plot, which is kinda weird and awesome. This year's Showcase mode takes an abbreviated look at the rise, fall, and subsequent return of WWE superstar Daniel Bryan. The mode certainly isn't long, but it does take a look at some of the most pivotal matches in Bryan's career, complete with year-appropriate attire, movesets, and even commentary to sell the authenticity. The gameplay gimmick of this mode, as with previous iterations, is that you need to work each individual match to hit certain objectives. These can be as simple as getting an opponent to a certain health level, or arranging them in a certain position in the ring, and they'll usually trigger an in-game cutscene that mimics the events of the match that you're recreating. It's a fun twist on the usual win the match objective, and as a wrestling fan it's cool to see these moments recreated with as much detail as they have been. 2K19 also brings some significant changes to its career mode. Instead of a less focused mode that allows you to challenge for any title across your career, 2K19 lets you create your wrestler before sending them on a goofy yet entertaining plot that starts in the indies and follows you as you rise through the ranks of the WWE. While the story is very cheesy, it's not without some truly entertaining moments, and the matches that the game throws your way are generally pretty good. It's by no means perfect, however. The ludicrously huge skill tree that you use to level up means that your character is going to be super weak for a very long time. And the story starts off feeling somewhat realistic, then dives headfirst into some crazy kayfabe bullshit pretty quickly. I'd also argue that this direction shift no longer means that you're free to pursue whatever titles and rivalries you want, but as a whole I think this mode is far more interesting than when you did have those options, so, you know, whatever. Beyond the career and showcase modes, you do have a handful of minor modes to sink time into as well, such as the new 2K Towers. These towers pit you against a series of themed opponents of varying difficulty, and while I like the concept in theory, there's rarely a strong enough theme to entice me to play more than a couple of these. The towers that require you to play as a certain superstar and force you to go up against past rivals are probably the coolest, so I'm not sure why they wouldn't just take this approach to all of the towers. No doubt these will change with time since it is an online feature, so it may get better, but for now, it's just sort of forgettable. Speaking of forgettable, let's talk Universe Mode, which I actually did forget about until I went to edit this review. It's about the same as every other year before where you have control over the WWE calendar. You can customize shows, superstars, titles, and rivalries to your heart's content, though this year does allow you to assign more champions to each show, as well as giving you 2 Money in the Bank briefcases to assign to shows as you see fit. While the mode is ultimately functional, I find that too much randomness stops Universe Mode from becoming a decent fantasy simulation mode. Rivalries that start automatically can be turned off, but you'll never have complete control over how a rivalry plays out, when wrestlers turn heel or face, or, most frustratingly, when promos can and will happen. If it were up to me, I'd never touch WWE 2K's promo system ever again because it is the most boring and obtuse system in the world. I came here to wrestle, guys, not work through bland dialogue trees, and trying to figure out which options elicit which crowd responses isn't immediately obvious, so what is even the point? I feel like Universe Mode is this close to being something really great, but the game takes so much control away from you and it never really feels like your universe to run. Outside of the actual gameplay modes, WWE 2K19 offers a huge number of customization options, allowing you to create your own custom wrestlers, movesets, entrances, title belts, money in the bank briefcases, videos, and arenas, and share them online. The Creation Suite is one of those few areas that the 2K wrestling games always improve on without also messing up in the process, and that's no different this year. Whether you're looking to create a Lovecraftian monstrosity or just hoping to fill out the game's weird roster gaps, the Creation Suite will easily suit your needs. On that note, let's talk roster. While it's certainly the largest roster in a recent WWE game, and the dedication to fleshing out the women's roster in particular is appreciated, there are a few notable absences this year. No Mick Foley, no Nikki Cross, and most glaringly, no NXT champion Tommaso Ciampa. These were all included in last year's game, and they're all still either with the WWE or on friendly terms, so how come they're gone now? It's baffling. Also, making the current women's champion on Raw, Ronda Rousey, DLC is kinda scummy. Making it even more frustrating is the fact that certain superstars have multiple iterations that take up multiple different character slots. There are like 5 or 6 Daniel Bryans and 3 or so Chris Jerichos, and while I appreciate having those variations in there, they clog up the superstar selection screen at the very least, while certain important wrestlers have been left out completely. Thankfully, the majority of the roster that does appear in the game looks really good. The last few entries have featured character faces that fall squarely in the uncanny valley, and while we're not quite out of there yet, 2K19 at least looks accurate for the most part. The game's audio doesn't hold up quite as well though. Wrestler entrance music is still great, and this year's soundtrack picks certainly line up with my personal tastes a lot more, but it's still weird to have the same 10 or so tracks looping forever by default. Can 2K games not afford to license a more extensive soundtrack? Can the menu music not include wrestler entrance themes by default? Seriously, what is the deal? I know you can customize it, but I shouldn't have to. Also, put more than 10 fucking songs in the game! You fucking cheapskates? Not to harp on and on about the audio, but the commentary is also kinda weird, in that the quality is good, and the lines themselves are accurate and sometimes entertaining, but certain lines are repeated en masse, while other sections of dialogue get cut off long before they're supposed to. It just sounds kinda sloppy, you know? To the game's credit, it does feature full voice work for its career mode, and with the exception of John Cena's less than convincing voice double, this touch is certainly appreciated, even if not all of the wrestlers sound half as charismatic in-game as they do on TV week in and week out. At least we still have those sweet video packages in the showcase mode, and the little interview sections with Daniel Bryan are really kinda cool. At the end of the day, WWE 2K19 feels like another step forward, and another step back. Its usual annual gameplay tightening, plus the reintroduction of Showcase Mode and the sizable changes to Career Mode, are certainly appreciated, but bizarre roster omissions, messy audio, and the fact that the gameplay still doesn't feel quite right after all these years is kinda disappointing. Also, and I forget to mention this every year, but unless you pay for it, unlocking all of the wrestlers and everything else takes a bunch of grinding. Thankfully some of it is unlocked through playing Showcase Mode, but too much comes down to meaningless in-game currency. It really feels like 2K is angling to get you to pay to unlock everything instead of playing the game. WWE 2K19 is good. How do I put this? The step forward this year felt larger than the step back. Not much larger, admittedly, but large enough that I can say that 2K19 feels like a better overall product than 2K18. If you don't like the previous games, there might be enough here to sway you, but I think previous fans will get the most enjoyment out of this. I mean, it's not a glowing recommendation, but it is what it is. It's fine.